that picture that was in the start. Yeah, make sure it comes up on the screen. And basically she's interested in these areas where you see Bigfoot, and she's interested in tracking the animals or whatever that's making the evidence. Okay, and
there we go.
You'll look forward to hearing her. Okay. Can we shut the lights now? Okay.
Hey, can I tell you a joke while they're working?
Tell us a
joke. I made up this joke. So why did Sasquatch cross the road? What? The Sasquatch crossed the road to show the armadillo it could be done. All right.
We need the big screen. I love it. Let's go.
Dance.
Yeah. Yeah. How even go?
There.
Right, so without further ado, let me introduce Shelly Covington-Montana.
Yeah! Yay!
That was fun. So yeah, I'm based out of the northeast part of Dallas, Texas. But for the last, I guess, 14 years or so, I've spent all summers in the Pacific Northwest. I'll go up in June and come home in October. And this all started with my husband. He apparently, I figured out that he had an encounter in East Texas in 1983. And we'd been married almost 40 years, and he kept telling me this weird story. And I was in Texas, and so I'm like, who could have that been that circled his camp and kept breaking big trees, and so about 25 years in, I was like, Bigfoot? And he says, yeah, and then once you think I was crazy. So, I knew he wasn't crazy. I've known him all my life. And that was right at the time our children were graduating from high school and leaving for college, so I had time. And what did I do? I went down the rabbit hole, and here I am today. So basically, when this all started, let me back up a little bit. I appreciate you all being here and giving me your hour of time. I mean, that's humbling, and I'm honored. Thank you so much. I hope that you leave today with something new that I can pass on to you. Everything I do is focused on new tools. Because when I went down that rabbit hole, I was noticing that people were, really just hitting trees and doing calls, sitting by the fire, and that's all great and good. But then I would hear complaints about people not believing them, or the scientific community not accepting what's going on out there, right? So I was like, there's no tools. I need a tool. I want to go and check all this out. And I'm a wildlife enthusiast. I've spent all my life, my dad called me Pigpen because I was in the dirt, playing in the dirt, messing with all kinds of critters. And so I thought, okay, my dad is in law enforcement, and he's going to think I'm crazy doing this. So what would my dad do? Well, you need facts, you need evidence, you need something to punch you in the face, right, Henry?
That's right.
Yeah, so I thought, what about a DNA kit, a wildlife DNA kit? Because I also was noticing that a lot of people had assumptions about what they were finding because they only had so much wildlife knowledge, as say, in their area. And I thought, you know what? Let's see if we can eliminate a lot of what it isn't. So it wasn't about proving what was Bigfoot. For me, I thought it would be much easier to prove what it isn't. So let's do a process of elimination. Then if we have 2 or 3 things of possibility, that's way easier to figure out. So Anyway, I talked about you can second slide.
Uh-huh.
You could so we have equipment, right? We've got recorders and thermals and Chuck Norris, he's famous, that's my guy, right? And our radios and 4-wheels, all those things. But I wasn't seeing DNA kits or anything kind of like it, maybe a little. Well, I get invited to the OP because I was sneaking into those Bigfoot rooms and watching people and trying to figure stuff out, and is this legit? Are they doing this? Are they doing what they say? And I would see where I didn't know. I don't know what Bigfoot does, but I know what horses do. I know what coyotes do. And so I would drop in a little few, well, actually, horses will do this, blah, 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 blah. I didn't want to say that's wrong. But I wanted to just kind of feed in my little information. Well, then I got a little bit of people noticing it. And the next thing I know, I'm getting a call from Shane Corson to come to the OP. I thought, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm going to learn all this stuff about Sasquatch and go out there and be from the South about it. Now, girls got to take a gift. When you're invited in the South to someone's home, we must bring a gift. So I thought, DNA kits. I'll make me some little wildlife DNA kits and take those as a thank you for inviting me, right? Well, that's when it all blew up. And then that's where we are today. The OP was so excited. I went from person to person to introduce myself. So I would like to introduce you to the wildlife DNA kit and not the Bigfoot DNA kit because we're going to eliminate what it could be first. Bigfoot's always last.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the next thing I know, I'm on the team as their DNA collection person. So as time goes on, I start thinking, okay, people love the DNA kits, but they're not really, getting out there and practicing with those things. You got to practice always, like you're casting. Casting, practice, because when you get that one beautiful print, you got one shot only. And if you're not practicing and making muscle memory, where you just spit out that stuff and you're ready to go and it comes out beautiful. It wasn't really happening. So, I love everything wildlife. I love tracks. I love tracking. And I kept telling myself, I want to be certified. I want to know more so I can do, once again, eliminate other possibilities. Because I was seeing a lot of misidentification. Didn't say much about it, but I was noticing it. And I love citizen science because think about it. When we were back in the day, back in the day, they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have cameras. They had a piece of paper and a pencil. Mm-hmm. And they would sit down and they would sketch what they saw, right? That was citizen science. That was just regular people getting out and pulling the data. Well, that was when I started thinking, okay, track and sign. And then I find this certification process. And it was attached to a citizen science-based website. And they encouraged people to come out, get certified, doesn't matter who you are, because that is the very first science, track and science. So think about this. So they call us hunter-gatherers back in the day, right? I think we were scavengers first. We were watching the predators kill, and then when they were done, we would go scavenge. Well, we need to follow these predators. How are we going to know where they are? So we start to study the track and find. And that, to me, is the very first science that we ever had. Man. And then journaling. Pictographs. That's another first science. And nature journaling is super important. And both of these things can really enhance your research success. So what I did is I hunted down a place where I could get certified. And what I found out through Cyber Tracker is a program that's open to anybody in the world. And it's worldly accepted Because guess what? The government doesn't want to pay for you guys to go out and count bobcats. They want us to do it because we're free. And because tracking is a dying science. Because now we're lazy. We can go to the grocery store. You know, those things. So that beautiful first science that teaches you the whole world, it will change your life. Because now your mind is starting to see things that you never saw before. The smallest details. When you learn to track insects, you start to see the tiniest details on a daily. How does that help your Sasquatch research? Well, now we can see hair that you may have walked past. So, but you're going all the way back to learning the morphology of the body. How is a bobcat built and why does he do what he does? You know, who killed that? I can tell you who killed it by the way he makes his incision, or who made the incision. Did it get dragged off? Did it get covered up? Was the hair shaved off? Was the pelt pulled off? Was it rolled up? All those things are what you learn. And then when you're certified, you're on a standard all the way across the board. So they implemented this into North America, Africa, all continents to help with poaching and just to keep that science alive so we can count. Because they don't go out and count bobcats, they go out and count bobcat tracks. Deer, when they poop anywhere from I believe it's 163 to 170 pellets per poop, and you can count the piles of pellets in a 1 acre lot, and then determine how many deer you have on your in your area. So people think tracking is about tracks. Tracking is about the whole gamut. And so you're starting to absorb and you're starting to be able to eliminate immediately what is in Sasquatch. I'm almost 62 years old. I ain't got time to sit there and try to figure out if this is what someone says. So anyway, they tell me I find a place that's going to give me a certification or let me test. Anybody can do it because master trackers in Africa, there's only like 5 of them left. They can't read or write. So what they did is they created a system, a digital system, where they could, because they're the ones they depend on for the poaching numbers. So they can go in and hit symbols so that it creates data that comes back to to the database. So you don't have to read or write, so you can be 7 and do this. It's open to everyone. And it gets you in the woods. Isn't that what we're all here for? Get into the woods. So when I went to sign up, they only do it once a year. It's run by the state, the head biologist of Texas in my state. It's all over the country, and they said, well, I think it was like $400 for a 2-day test, and don't worry, Shelly, you're gonna fail the first time. And I said, what? No, I'm not. They said, oh yeah. It's okay. All the state game wardens and all the biologists take the test and they fail. So don't worry. You'll be all right. You'll learn a lot and you'll come back and take the test. No way, Jose, I ain't doing that. So what I did is I found a specialist that was certified in North America, Africa, and part of Europe. And he mentored me for 9 months. Every day, 50 questions. And it wasn't a track. It was stuff. It was just the smallest, tiniest things. But then I had to learn the morphology. I had to learn all the gates. I had to just pinprick everything to that to figure out what I was looking at. Because that's what you do. You sit, you look at the track or whatever it is, and you say, what I see. I see pinpricks 7/16 of an inch away from toe pad number 1. I see. You run down this gamut of all the things you see, and now we've eliminated 90% of what it isn't. Does that make sense? So let's say Kenya versus Felix. So I did that, took my test, scared to death. Oh my gosh, 2 days, 60 questions, And it's like, okay, what foot and who? You know, I mean, we got it down to where I can tell you front, right, left, back, all right, what gate? All of these things. Okay, what insect? What rodent? Okay, here's the story. What happened here? Well, the deer ran around here, stomped on this branch, and something scared him. He ran back down here, jumped in the river, and swam away. What kind of deer? Black deer? No, we ain't got black deer here. So that's the other thing. You gotta know the region and what animals are there. So, take the test. Shelly Covington-Montana, level 2. Which they told me I was gonna fail. I didn't just get level 1, I got the next level up. So, I encourage you all to look into your area. Even if you can take a class just to open your mind's eye into this. So, I'm excited. Now, maybe it'll help me that I can pass this on because they want me as a steward to pass it on to everyone else because if I don't do things right, they'll take it away from me. So, anyway, let's move on to nature journey next one. Sorry. So, we went over this. What was the first sign? Like I said, I believe it was scavenging and trapping. So I really, it's my passion. Now today, I can walk anywhere. I see all kinds of tracks. The hardest question I got, which was really interesting, was we're in a riverbank and the water had gone down, and there were 3, like someone stuck sticks in the mud where the water had gone down. Just what is it? And I had never seen that. I was like, I don't. Okay, the gate. How far apart are these? And who lives here? What else is around? Like I'm walking around looking for other stuff, and I'm like, beaver? They're like, correct. They tippy toe, and their toenails hit and make these weird little impressions. And I thought, oh, see, this is why, because I took all that information and gathered it together. Had never seen a beaver do that, but I was able to analyze it down to that because I made those eliminations. So that's why I think it can help our Sasquatch research, right? So the next thing I think, so here, sorry, that didn't come out so right. So these are bear. I got these in Washington State. This one here, I'm so proud of these right here. These guys right here, and this is to remind you, please practice your castings on everything. Your own foot, any other wildlife. Because it will mess up this substrate right here was fine sand silica. And this is where I had my encounter. And just by chance, Bob Gimlin had come out to see me. And we're driving down the road. And the bear had come into my camp the night before. Was turning over logs and such in the tree line. And he'd come out on the road. And I said, Bob, stop. There's some tracks. I gotta pass them. And he gets out. You know, they're this deep. They're millimeters deep. In this, you could blow the sand and it's going to go away. It's where the desert meets the forest in that region. And I said, I can test these. And he said, well, darling, I know you're good. I don't know if you're that good. And I said, watch it. So, because I practiced on different substrates, I was able to pull all the bear casts. And then, of course, it was hairspray from way up here. I created that shell. I made my casting material, my hydrostone, really close, pushed it in, left it for 3 or 4 days, and it came out beautifully, and I made box on it. So that's just a reminder that mud isn't the only thing, So practice. Now, here, these tracks, I don't know if y'all can see them real well, but you know how people say, Oh, it's got nails. It's not at all. It's not a cat. Cats don't put out the nails. Yes, they do. It depends on the substrate. This is a wild pet trailway. It was huge. And if you see right here, see these teardrop toes here? Can y'all tell where the phalange is collecting water? So you literally see this part of the toe. And what it was I was hunting for fossils in this creek bed. And this mud, when I stepped in it, was up to my hip. So he's trying to spread out his toes so that he doesn't sink. So the way that we do it in Cybertracker, you know how you got the X, you make an X and it's painted, you can't, it's feeling. We don't go by that. What we do is on felids, cats, all four of these toes, if they can almost or fit in that pad, that's a cat, it's a dog. Their pads are much smaller than a canine. So that's an easy way to kind of separate the two. All right, go ahead, slide. So another thing. So I sit down and I draw all my tracks. And then I go and I write all the facts. And I diagram it. What this does for you is it trains your mind to memorize what you're looking at so you can see it again. We're creating muscle memory, right? So I look at tracks and then I draw them. And then I try to draw them from memory. Because like, what kind of bear would this be? I'm sure it says, but say grizzly versus black bear. There's a couple of things. So these are black bear. With grizzly, this space here is going to be much closer, and the toes are going to be more even. They're not going to fall this way. So it's little things like that you start to notice, and then immediately it'll pop out to you. Okay, slide. Okay, nature journey. This is important. This is another one of those first science, right? Lewis and Clark. All they did is sit down in nature journal. And what we can do is say, is anybody in here into the tree structure stuff? No? Okay. So there's a lot of talk in certain groups where tree structures are believed to be made possibly by Sasquatches. I don't know. I don't think there's any documented accounts of anybody seeing that happen or any native tribes talking about it happening. So I don't really put a lot into it, but what I started to do, next slide. What I started to do is if people show me or a tree structure, I nature journal it. Because what happens, next slide please. Ooh. Next slide. There it is. What happens is you ask 3 questions. So you don't have to be a super great artist. What you're doing is you're creating a visual in your mind. You're starting to see detail, once again, that wasn't necessarily there when you walk by. So you ask yourself, what do I notice? Just put down the things you notice about your tree structure or whatever it is you're journaling. What does it remind me of? Once again, you just put down just random stuff that it reminds you of. Come on, please come. And I wonder. So now we're starting to ask these questions, which create different questions. So when I look at tree structures and they say, a human couldn't do that, I'm like, well, what kind of trees are those? Are they all the same? Is it cedar? Is it pine? Is it oak? That means that that's a big difference. There's a big weight difference. How long does that take to decay? What kind of trees? How long would that take before it decay? That can determine how long it's been there or how long it's going to be there. When was the last flood? And then you start noticing, well, what kind of needles would be on that tree if it's all pine? All these things start to make your mind get focused on details. Not necessarily that this is going to teach you about Sasquatch. It's just going to retrain your mind. Next slide. And then, what if 10 years down the road, we've got a discovery, for sure. You know, it's solid. Sasquatch is real, but we have no data on what they do. I guarantee you, if you were to journal all the tree structures, if you were that guy that really is into it and journaled them all, and they said, we have no data, regardless if they do build them or they don't. And I encourage people to journal in that journal, even Boy Scout structures, so you can see differences, right? If you had that 10 years down the road, you'd be like, hey, I got some data right here. And you're part of that discovery. You're part of the big picture, which your work now has value. I mean, I think everybody has value, and I think their work does. But if we really want the attention of the general public in science to not laugh at us, they don't laugh at me. I mean, I don't care. But I know some people, it bothers them. Give yourself value by giving yourself your tools. Open up your minds into more information that the scientific community is aware of. When they see us trying like that, they want to help. And that's where I'm at. I get help from the scientific community who want to encourage me to do more. I sell these DNA kits, and one's going to be auctioned today. Let me grab it. Is everything going okay? Or y'all, is it okay? Nobody falling asleep yet? All right, cool. So, remember that little DNA kit I went and gave it a little gift from the South? Well, now, 14 years later, it has evolved 8 times, and it's fully medical, fully forensics. You can test any and everything that would be DNA, fingerprints, handprints, hair. It's all included with instructions, and we know who to send it to. And I want to give you some ideas. So, you know the water DNA stuff. The eDNA, you all heard of that?
Yeah.
So they're pulling, so there's a kit in here I created, and it's basically how they tell what fish are in streams. They'll pull the water, run through this little filter, send it off. They can get the DNA to say, oh, we have brown trout or, other species in the stream. Well, I don't know that would be sufficient for Sasquatch because you need Sasquatch to sit there for a few days, or live in the stream to get enough DNA that would go through that filter, right? Because it's moving water. But what if, let's say you see a trackway or see a track right by a stream, and that track has water in it. That has your DNA. That's got a lot of DNA. Because how many times can a dog go out 2 weeks later and they can follow tracks of anything, right? They can smell it, so we know there's DNA. That's where I would be collecting before you cast it. Because then you hear, oh, I can't cast it, it's full of water. Sure you can. You can pull the water out. But why not run it through the DNA collection kit? Then cast it. Now we have 2 things we can send off.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do that. Now, y'all get a lot of snow here? Yeah. So I've perfected in my mind, I've experimented and it works, how to pull snow tracks. Beautiful snow tracks. But first, if you've got a trackway, because gosh darn it, I love camping in the winter and snow because all the things that you didn't know were right around your camp, you see them the next day, right? If you had a trackway and you thought it might be something unusual, scoop some snow out of a track, let it melt, run it through the DNA. I think that's where it's really going to go. I think that's what's going to, the genome bank is just leaps and bounds. If they were let me say this, I feel like if there was not enough DNA to pull out of that filter, it might be able to pull it in a year because they've improved so much. So whether that happens or not, I don't know. We're trying. We're trying it the right way. So once again, science is going to come and help you because I'll hear about you. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So, anyway, laws of journaling, and what all this does is it puts your brain on paper. You know, it starts to once again open your mind to new and different ideas, which then starts you coming up with better questions. And you start learning to bring out your own ideas. I mean, I want to always share what I know or what I've learned, or to influence people to go out and come up with their ideas. You know, I like to share. I don't want to gatekeep. I want to help, because I don't believe that I'm going to be the one to discover Bigfoot. That's not what it's about for me. What it's about for me is the great North American Sasquatch deserves our best. He's not a cartoon. He is the North American treasure. And so I want to help people who have legitimate stuff show others that there's value there. And I want to give you tools, but I want to spark you to come up with your own ideas. I think that's where we then become a community, because, you know, that's kind of a weird thing too, right? The slide. So this is one of the older DNA kits, but like I was saying, everything you could possibly test and how to test it is in the kits. I encourage you, if you don't want one of mine, create your own. It doesn't matter. It's just doing that science is really going to help us all out in the end. Slide. Okay, so this here, I got a call from Cliff back a couple of years ago, and he was in Texas. And we were getting ready to do the Texas conference, and I get a call on Thursday when I had to be out there on Friday. They're like, we've got a face print out of East Texas. They're bringing the whole door. Bring your DNA kits. We got to pull the print. I'm like, what? Okay. So, whether or not this is Sasquatch, human, or something else doesn't matter to me. All that matters to me is that I pull it properly and to where they can study it, because that's not my field. I'm out there doing the work on the ground, and then it goes off and people can analyze it. But one thing I noticed about prints and face prints, because I had Cliff and my husband in the room, and I was like, all right, now first of all, because we pulled the DNA first, and then we did the print. And I said, first of all, you got to practice, because it's not easy. You got to have the lightest touch. So Cliff, you practice. I'm going to practice, so I have my husband's face, I'm pushing against his legs. My husband's like Neanderthal. He's not a tall guy, but his bones are, like, his wrist is as wide as my fist. And so he has this big Neanderthal head and this bracket. And I thought, push his face on there. And it's like, oh my God, you're so big, Shelly. But what I noticed was when we saw the print of his face print, I mean, he's got a head that's so big he couldn't wear regular hats ever. But it looked so much smaller on the glass. And I guess because we're three-dimensional, I don't know. It was just interesting. I felt like I learned something at that point. So, excuse me. Anyway, we got all that taken care of, and now it sits in the museum, I think. It was there when last time I was there, but I got a call from Doug Hijack, and he was like, okay, Shelly, we've got all these great prints coming through. We've got this waxy, weird print. I'm studying compounds between primates and humans, and we have one less compound, or they do. And I was like, okay. He goes, but I don't know what to call it. It's like white, sticky stuff. And I said, okay. He goes, gotta name it something. This is crazy. This is cool. This is gonna be great. And I said, okay, give me a minute. Let me get into it too. So I come back and said, how about alba vernis? That's incredible, Shelly. That's very wonderful. So alba means white. So he's saying white sticky stuff, and it's a protective coating. Is what he's telling me that he's finding in these prints, primates supposedly have a protective coating. And I said, Vernex is the only thing I find because that's the protective coating on babies' uniform. And he was like, that's great. So it's the SAP kit, the Sasquatch Albovernix is what we coined it. Not that it means much, but anyway, so slide please. So right here is where we're pulling that DNA off of the glass, and I provide you with like 6 swabs, so you can send them to everybody. Not just one swab. You can keep a swab, you get a swab, you get a swab, you know. So that way, because of what happens. You think, great, something happens. It was, you know, we tested it and it wasn't good. You got to, let's pull about 6 of them. Let's do that. Let's get a lot. So we did that, and I don't know who has, go away. Hello. Hello. Okay, so anyway, you can hear me, right? I talk a lot and I talk loud. Go ahead and slide. And these are the dry swab units. Go ahead and slide. Slide. Oh, thank you, sir. Sorry, this presentation was not the one I was going to do, but so again, slide. And here's the kit. Sasquatch Albovernix, 60 compounds, Sasquatch compound, pH level. This is all the stuff that Hijack told me. So, and at that time there were 3 billion genomes. I bet it's probably 10 now. And y'all know a billion from a million is like 900 years, right? And it's jumping that much. So y'all get ready. Slide. All right. So one of the things I wanted to do before I leave, what do we got on time? I want to give y'all some tips and tricks. I got 20 minutes. Okay. So, how many of y'all have found hairs? Okay. Good. There is hair at least 8 inches from you at all times in the woods, no matter where you are. When you think of all the animals, right? There's always hair everywhere. If you just sit down and look and concentrate, you can find it. But I'm going to give you the easy way. All you simply do for just, you know, trees and branches and barbed wire, just take some white paper with you. So what we're looking for, and this is how I see life, because my background's in art. So I see contrast and highlight and line. I don't see like necessarily faces. I see roundness and straight. And I see contrast mostly. So what you do is you grab you a little white piece of paper. So basically my hair is black. It's on a black background. Can't see it, but when I put it here, you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
See? So like when I'm looking for bear hair on wavy trees, I take out my piece of paper and I just run it down the bark, and then all this hair just starts popping out. So then you're starting to, oh, well, I see the hair, let me collect it. Now another thing, you're going to look for more stretchy hair. Most wildlife has hollow hair, like deer. Y'all know how the deer hairs kind of pop. It's hollow. It's to pull in air to keep them warm. So we're really looking for something more like our hair, which is a little on the stretchy side. Okay? Let's see. I'm thinking of all this. I had all these great tips and tricks, but a whammy tree. Okay, so let me talk about how many of y'all come across kill sites where you find dead animals. Yeah. So you can learn exactly who killed what and where and why just by what's going on in that kill site. That's what I'm doing right now. And one of the things is when you come across a kill site, say you find a deer and he's dead and his neck is all twisted. How many of y'all have heard of that where, oh, his neck was twisted, must have been his Sasquatch? I see it all the time. So what happens is you've got cougars that kill, let's say cougars and bobcats. Cougars, they attack from behind, right? We all know that. We all hear that. They pierce the spine. That's true, but it's not always the case. So, with cougars, a cougar kill, he's going to attack from behind most likely. He's going to bite in the back, but then he's going to get the throat. And he's going to suffocate it. And he's going to twist it so that he's double suffocation. A lot of times they'll clamp down on the whole face. So now we'll suffocate more. We're going to twist the neck so it suffocates here until it dies. Now, cougar will right there open up the carcass, pull the entrails out. They always pull entrails out. All felines do that and drag it off to go hide it, to go cache it. And that's going to be under a bush or under a ledge, and then they're going to cover it up. And they're going to cover it up very neat. Now, bears versus cats, bears are messy. Cats are very clean. When they kill and cache, it's a very clean, nice, neat little pile. When bears cache, it's bloody and it's messy. Bears will drag their prey right through everything. They'll go through a fence, they'll go through the bushes, they go right through, whereas a cat will go around. Now, bobcat. So bobcat's what? Medium-sized dog, right? Well, they will kill adult deer, but they always kill adult deer, or try to, when they're sleeping. That's their attack mode, right? They catch them while they're down. They do the same thing. They go over, and they twist the neck, double suffocation. But they're little. How are they going to get that guy over there? What they do is they'll leave him, they gut it, they drag off the entrails because that makes it lighter, right? A lot of times they will, both cougar and bobcat, they live in the heart or the brain. The brain is a big deal for them too. But the porcupine, that's a favorite bobcat meal. Can you believe it? And they skin the thing all the way out. Cats don't like hair. They hate hair. So, with the bobcat, he will kill it where it lays, and he doesn't necessarily drag it off, but he'll start to go ahead and eat on it. And when their incisions are like in the groin here, because that's thin skin, and they'll make a hole. Now, they can only eat so much, so they gotta cache it, meaning hide it. They only cover up the hole. Whereas a mountain lion covers up the whole thing. Make sense? Also, they shave the hair off. They clip it off with their teeth and then use that hair to cover up the hole. So grizzly bears. Grizzly bear will strip all of the skin off an elk, fold it up nice and neat, and put it over here. I mean, that is just incredible. I'm like, wow. I know it's gruesome. But it's interesting. And why do they do what they do? They do what they do because of the morphology of the body. So their jaw strength, their size, their gait, everything depends on how big and how strong they are is how the rest of their life is determined. So when you start to learn those things, once again, you will be able to eliminate so much of what is not big. And this is going to help you open your mind to your own ideas. And so, with that, are we out of time?
Shelly,
Yes, you got questions.
what happened with the DNA from the face print?
Cliff and Dr. Mildred have it, and I don't. Look, I'll put it this way: once it leaves what I do, I don't really bother with it any longer because if I did, I'd be worried about a lot of stuff I have no control. So I don't know that they've tested it, but I sent it off with Cliff. So, but honestly, I don't think it was Sasquatch, to be honest with you, because it was too. This right here, the Cupid's bow area, it was just way too small, and this was just not long enough. So, girl, wake up. It's okay. I'm tired too. I'm just like, it's okay. He was taking a picture. So. Any more questions?
Yeah.